Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leathercraft, and this is the Leather Element. If you've got a good question for us, or a good idea for a leather element, drop it in the comment box below. Now, we've done a couple of videos on shop tricks. More to come there. Got a good list of those. But what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about things that we want to avoid in our leather shop. Now, if you're new to leather, this is going to be a big help. It's going to maybe help you save a tool or a work surface. But seasoned pros, you know what? Those of us with a little experience, we can make the same simple mistakes. So let's do this. Let's jump over here, look at one of the easiest mistakes to make in a leather shop. We've got a project ready to go, clean lines, got a good consistent groove line there. Our stitch line is going to be beautiful. So our concentration, it's right here. I'm going to really take my time, try to get that chisel right in that groove line, line it up, hit it. I just went through my leather right into my quartz. Now, I can't cast stones here because right there, I've got 6 dings. Now, with a cheap tool, what's going to happen is when we go through this leather, that long taper is actually going to curve on us. So what we've actually done is lock the tool into the leather. When we go to set our next set, what's happening there is we're lined up at our groove line, but the tip of our chisel is actually inside that line. With a quality tool, simply going to flatten that. We can sharpen that down, but again, it's going to trash our tools and our quartz. So let's make sure we've got our punch board over here. Now when I set that, no issues. Not going to damage my tool at all. If patience is a virtue, then that check is going to bounce when it hits my account. Notorious for not having patience, but right here we have to because we cannot hand sew wet. So we've stamped, we've tooled. We don't take the time to let our leather dry. This opens up all kinds of problems. First off, when we chisel, we're going to get an enormous hole because we've lost the body in our leather. That's just one of the problems. So let's do this. Let's get three or four stitches in here because what's happening now is that when I go to pull my tension, that thread sinks almost halfway through our leather or even more. So let's get, again, a couple of stitches in here. And one more stitch, okay? So notice right off the bat, since we now don't have our body, look what's happening to my leather. We're getting all blown out there, no body. But here's the bigger problem. Let's step over, hammer down our stitch line. Outside of the fact that that now looks terrible, we can always pull that, maybe straighten it out. But you know what? Now I've stretched out my leather. But right here, let's tap down our stitch line. Okay, outside of the tool marks, which are bad, notice my thread has almost disappeared. There's the difference. Look at that stitch line. World of difference. With our Chicago screws or screw posts, now this is simply a threaded rivet. Very strong though. Primary use here is if we want to replace, say, a buckle, change out a buckle, or we have a strap that gets a lot of wear. We can easily replace that, but also strength, very strong. The point here is that when I put these in, if I don't add glue, the little cap, it's going to work out relatively quickly. But what I don't want to do is seal this in forever, say with some really heavy-duty glue. I want to use a light glue because all I need to do here is just tack that together. The biggest point, when I'm trying to remove these, we don't have much here to grab onto, so I really have to get close in. Hopefully I can grab that and we can unscrew it. If that's in there with a solid adhesive, we'll never get that out. But just a simple white glue, it will back out for us. Here's one straight from experience. Yeah, you'll see where I'm going with this. I cut everything with a box cutter, but this is going to work for most blades. What I want to do, first off, is when I'm cutting, I want to keep my whole thing down. I want to keep my knife down. I'm going to put my hand actually on my leather. So therefore, that's giving me a very sturdy foundation. So I'm going to get a good, clean cut. What I don't want to do is cut with my blade this high. What's going to happen is as I'm moving along, it's going to be super easy for that blade to jump my straight edge. Where's it going to land? Right here. It's going to stop right in my thumb. There's no reason for us in leather crafting to have a bad wound. But also, too, what can help is if I'm cutting, I'm going to try to keep my hand behind as much as I can behind my blade. So therefore, if I do jump, I don't run that risk. Let's cut this open because there is a second part to this. With a bevel or an edger, with a cheap edger, what's going to happen is this is pointed to begin with. So as I strop this over time, these 2 points are going to get exceptionally sharp. And again, speaking from experience here. So what happens is as I'm beveling along, I'm holding my leather down. That's going to jump my leather and it's going to go right into that finger. That is an irritating wound. So again, with a good tool, first off, what I can do is I can keep my hand behind that edger as I move along. I've got no issues. We get a number of questions and comments from folks that say, hey, I've dyed my leather, let it dry, dyed it again, let it dry, dyed it again. Well, this brings up a number of problems. First off, the fact that right here we've got 9 hours of dry time. But there's a bigger problem. Right here, I've got just a Pro Dye light brown, good and consistent, 1 pass through my dye. This is 2 passes. So dye it, let it dry, dye it again. We're starting to darken. This is 3 passes. So now we're really starting to get dark. My point here is let's pick our color, let's dye once and walk away. So first off, we're saving a lot of dry time. But secondly, as we add additional coats, you can see there's a little bit of a metallic look to this. That's called bronzing. What that is simply there's a metallic element to the dye stuff that's going to start to accumulate on our top grain. Now we can simply wipe that off with some alcohol and it will be fine. But the overall point here is let's dye once, walk away. We don't have the dry time, but also we don't have any guesswork as to what color we're looking for. There are several things we want to avoid when we're doing our edge work. Now with edge work, I'm talking simply about a groove line. I'm going to bevel front, bevel back, and then slick. The point there is I want a rounded, high gloss edge. Feels good, looks good. But the first problem is when I'm wetting my leather, I don't want to add too much water here. That's going to make the leather very soft. But the second problem there is I don't want to hold this in a fashion to where if I've got a little too much water on my sponge, it's going to drain across the top grain. If we're using a lighter colored dye, or say an antique, or stain, that's going to be very visible. Now, when we jump over to slick, I'm basically looking more for heat and friction as opposed to pressure. So what I can do, let's make about a dozen passes on this end. Okay, now the camera's not going to pick that up, but that's now become rounded, and I've got a little bit of gloss. A little more time, that would look great. So on this end, let's do this. Let's press down on that. Really get some weight behind it. Okay, so a number of problems have happened here. First off, notice my end. Look how much I've actually sunk in to that line. Secondly, when I run my hand across that, I can feel I've got a lip on the top and I've got a lip on the back. But also, now I've closed down that groove line and the water's wicked towards that, so it might not be terribly visible on camera. But I've closed that groove line down, and now I actually only have about 2/3 of the leather from my groove to my edge. So that's going to look incredibly inconsistent. A few simple tricks, quality tools, and a little patience. Well, okay, I've got 2 out of 3, and that's not bad. But I do hope this helps you avoid some of the pitfalls, and in turn, makes your time in your shop just a little bit more enjoyable. Thanks for taking time to watch The Leather Element. Good luck with your projects.